This is Lark,
Kimberly.
and this is auto asphyxiation. Today, we're going to talk about the SAFE Act, which actually SAVE Act. I don't know why I call it the SAFE Act. The SAVE Act, and it's supposed to be like saving, I guess, the democracy, but it's not. It's not doing that. I'm gonna give you a little background. Um, this is all kind of related to the dismantling of the Voters' Right Act. Up until Shelby, which went from 1982 to 2000, Section 2 worked in tandem with Section 4, according to University of Michigan. And the thing is that Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act prohibits the denial and abridgment of the rights of any citizens of the United States to vote on the account of race or color. Is one of the most important tools used by civil rights organizations to combat racial discrimination in voting. But the 2013 Supreme Court decision, Shelby County versus Alabama and Holder, essentially gutted Section 5. So now Section 2 is just kind of like out there, like, oh, I don't know. Like, is it racist? Is it not racist? I mean, of course, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not like an expert in that part of it. But the SAVE Act amends the National Voters' Right Act of 1993 by introducing a requirement for individuals to provide proof of U.S. citizenship and registering to vote in federal elections. Now that seems like, oh, that doesn't seem harmful, but yet, Kimberly, what is the problem with that? What's going on? This seemingly
Well,
innocent thing.
the SAVE Act is, our government likes acronyms. It stands for Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. So this is going to require proof of citizenship for you to register to vote in person. And the primary proof of citizenship for most U.S. residents is a birth certificate. Um, I've had massive amount of problems getting copies of my birth certificate. I don't know about you. And that's also going to do away with the ability to vote online or by mail.
Well, I think the thing is this is that, we've been talking about in regards to not we, but just kind of like the universal we. When I say we, I'm like the universal we. This is going to impact transgender people who have changed their name. This is going to impact women who have changed their name in regards to marriage. And this is also, and here's the thing, half of these things are coming out of the South, the oligarchs out of Dixie, and one of the people who literally never had their ID, not never had their have their ID, but the people like the group that essentially a lot often doesn't have ID are African Americans. Essentially, African Americans, even more than immigrants, are the group least likely to have their ID. I know that and this is not even just kind of like this, like, oh, these other black people. Well, I was one of those black people for a very long time that did not have an ID. I didn't have an ID for like a good 5 years. So you're kind of like, well, how does this happen? Things happen, life happens, and just and I think that that's the whole thing. This is a lot of data is talking about like 21 million Americans don't have documentation. They don't have their birth certificate, and they don't even have passports. Like that's not like something typically people have.
No, especially in the United States, because, I mean, we get dragged a lot for not being world travelers per se, but a lot of people, our country landmass is so big. So a lot of people just travel within the continental United States and they don't require a passport for that.
No, and I think this is the thing too. People don't understand. It's like literally for a lot of like working class people, like this, they stay in their state, they stay in their little area, and you have no reason to have a passport. Where's your birth certificate? Who knows? Because another thing that a lot of working class people do is move a lot because, oh, your rent went up. You got to move. This happened. You got to move. This happened. Then your stuff get lost. Social security gets lost. Your driver's license gets lost. Your birth certificate gets lost. And the act of voting, where in a lot of places where it's kind of like you just, you do it online or you do it, through the mail. Now it's going to become this complicated process where you got to go in person. I mean, here's the thing. a lot of people who are working class, when I just this way, most people, if you work for a living, you work in class. Most people. Here's the thing, but we kind of like, most people don't have like flexible jobs where they can go to the DMV. Here's the thing too, the DMV oftentimes is open from 9 to 5. They don't have late
Eh,
night hours at the DMV. I mean, I don't know, right? Right, Kimberly? Do
They
they have?
some of them do, like in New Jersey, some of them do, like if you go to their website, they'll have like circulating offices that have late night hours, but their late night hours are until 7. So that's not really like a late night hour, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, okay, now I gotta go. Here's the thing. I'm not even sure like what the process is, but whatever the process is going to be in person. So I'm not even sure how the whole. I don't think registered to vote in person before. I didn't even know how that process would work. Do you?
I have no. I think the first time I registered to vote was when I, like, we were all getting leading up to being 18 in high school, and they passed out voter registration cards in high school, and we all filled them out so that when we turned 18, we would have our cards and be ready. And any other time that I had to register to vote, it was attached to my driver's license.
Exactly. I'm just kind of like I think it's really interesting, like because this is called this, the show is called Asphyxiation, and essentially how the car and how the automobile is used in so many ways to you know uh empower and disempower people. Oh, you don't have a license, how to get a license, how to, the thing is that I thought was really interesting when I moved to New Jersey, I wear glasses. I literally cannot see. And when I was in California, every time I got my license, I had to have an eye test because they were just like, we know you can't see, so we need to see how you can see. When I moved to New Jersey, the only thing they cared about is, are you a citizen? They just wanted my pass, like my not my passport. They wanted my birth certificate, and this is how I got. And they never checked my eyes. It says I have perfect vision.
Your
The
7
only
points of ID or whatever it
yeah.
is.
The only thing they cared about is, are you legally here? And I thought that was really interesting because I'm like, well, what if I'm legally here and I can't see and I can't drive very well? Well, you don't care about that. All you care about is if I have my birth certificate. And I hear the thing is that the SAFE Act threatens to disrupt, like it says, apparently 69 million women who've changed their names after marriage, but a lot of them haven't changed their names officially. I know because essentially, like, I've been married 3 times. All right. So we'll say that I've been married 3 times. So my name has changed quite many times. Sometimes I officially change it. Sometimes I don't. This would have, really impacted me. I mean, but here's the thing. Say you're like a normal person, you just get married one time. That's what impact you. You didn't.
I don't think even normal people just get married one time anymore.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They don't. And this is the thing. It's like you sit there and it's kind of like, oh, there's this expectation, especially, oh, you changed your name to your husband's name, but now what's going to happen is like, oh, well, you don't officially change your name, then you're not going to be able to vote. This is just more paperwork, more BS to control women, to make people kind of go, I'm exhausted, I'm not going to vote. I mean, and also just to impact so many disenfranchised people. I mean, here's the thing. I think about this. Most people don't have passports. That's why people brag about it so much. Like, oh, the passport bros, blah 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 blah. I mean, like, I got this fact. It says 140 million Americans don't have a passport. So
Yeah.
essentially, if you changed your name or something like that, like, you need your birth certificate. How do you get your birth certificate? Like, I mean, of course, yeah, you call the county in which you were born, but it's not so simple, especially if you change your name. Okay, what do you do when you change your name? I mean, this is all just a bunch of paperwork that is just going to make people so exhausted they're not going to vote.
And that's the idea. That's the idea, because I think about the time I've lost my wallet twice in my life. The first time it wasn't as difficult because I had some paperwork at home. The second time, I couldn't find anything. And I had to go to, in order to go and get a copy of my driver's license, I had to go to the place where I got married and get a copy of my marriage certificate. They didn't want to give one to me because I didn't have my driver's license. Like, I had all this mail and I had all these, and I was like, please, like, please just help me. You know, like, if I don't have this, I can't get a driver's license. If I can't get a driver's license, I can't get a new social security card. You know, like, it really causes a cascade effect in your life where you can essentially become a non-person very quickly.
Yeah, and I think this is like, and the thing is that, the person that's kind of championing this bill, Chip Roy out of Texas, he introduced this in, I guess, 2024. He reintroduced it. And essentially it's like, oh, we need to like make sure that the people who are voting are voting. And here's the thing, the data shows that there's nobody who's people that the whole problem of people who are not citizens voting is like a non-problem. It's a non-issue.
It's a non-issue
that people are doing. So essentially, what you're doing is disenfranchising predominantly Black people, and women and transgender people. And this is just like, it's like, even like your real, like, even I said, even in some cases, like they said, real ID won't work. And here's the thing, you doing this problem is just going to make people not vote, because they're not going to even like, even if it doesn't pass, this conversation, this discourse is really going to make people like, well, I don't think I can vote. I remember when I first moved to New Jersey, I remember people saying, well, I don't know, you need to have your ID to vote. And I said, that's actually against the Voters' Rights Act. You don't need your ID to vote. And some people were like, well, you should. And here's the thing, not educating people on what your rights are in regards to voting is one of the ways that they get people just to not vote. By even just introducing this, you are dampening the vote. Go ahead.
They won't. Yeah, no, you're right. They hear it from somebody. And so they decide, well, I don't have my ID. They don't confirm the information, so they don't vote.
Yeah. Yeah. And
they just,
like,
it's just like it's apathy.
Yeah, yeah. It's like like they're afraid they're going to go to jail. That's the whole thing. Well, if I don't have my right ID, I don't have all this, then then I can't vote. And here's the, and here's the, when I'm on these like neighborhood groups are just like, well, people should have their ID in order to vote, because how do we know who they are? I'm like, well, here's the thing. It's like, when you live somewhere, when you have your information, there's databases. So now, instead of this just being through the feds, it's going to be the state is going to have to do it. So like you said, this is going to prevent online voting. It's going to prevent mail-in voting. And we already have situations in the United States where we don't have a voter holiday. So you'd have to take off from work in order to vote. I mean, and so this is like, wow, you're going to have to take off in order to prove where you are, to prove where you live, to prove who you are. And then you're going to have to take off in order to like actually vote. People are like, well, you should just vote anyway. You shouldn't have to like make it, you shouldn't make it easy for you. Well, that's not the whole thing. It's like people have to go to work. And if you have it, you don't have voting on the weekends. You have voting from this, this time period where people can't, and only for like one day, you could have the voting open for an entire week from 8 to 8, and people could kind of figure it out. But we have it situated where if we had the mail-in, but the in-person voting is only one day. So if you don't have, the voter registration situation, it's just, this is all designed to prevent people from voting. Because if people were able to vote, if regular people were able to vote, the Republicans wouldn't be able to win. The only way that fascists are able to win is by dampening the vote, preventing people from voting. And this is why I get so irritated about this whole idea, like, oh, voting is not the only way. And if they didn't want you to vote, then they're not allowing us to vote. That's
there's a reason why they don't want us to vote, and that is a key goal in Project 2025, is to suppress minority voting rights.
Yeah.
And when I researched this, part of the issue too with the wording of this law is that they have now decided each state should establish a process in which an applicant can provide additional documentation to the election official. So for married women who have changed their last name, their birth certificate doesn't match their ID, et cetera, et cetera. But it fails to dictate or guide how to determine that. It leaves it up to the states. So, they famously like to leave things up to the states, which they did when they struck down Roe v. Wade. They said, oh, we'll leave it back to the states. And we have learned through the Dobbs ruling that vague language in these laws hurts people, because now people won't do something. And so you go into an election office. Now you have to register in person. You have all of this paperwork. You've tried so hard to get everything together. And the election official is looking at it and something just doesn't seem right to them. And they're afraid that they may get in trouble, lose their job, perhaps like get some kind of a voter a fraud felony or something like that. And they say no. It's just like what's happening with these vague trigger laws that took place in a lot of the red states after the Dobbs ruling, where we have these vague laws. So doctors and healthcare providers are unsure of where they can act and protect their own selves as well, and the patient too. And we're seeing the maternal mortality rate in Texas has gone up 56% between 2019 and 2022 because of these vague laws that leave it up to the states to decide without any guidance or any language put into place so that they can make clear-cut decisions. And that's done purposefully. That is a feature, that is not a bug.
Well, I think this is the thing is so interesting is that, I think people a lot of times they kind of sleep on Texas because, what you were saying about the death rates, but also in regards to, this law, this act, that's going to suppress voting was reintroduced from a person from Texas. I think people don't even understand the level of, I think Texas is diabolical because they're a place where they fund their colleges, but they fund their colleges, but they double down on sexism and they double down on racism. So they can't use the whole excuse that, oh, people in Texas are ignorant. No, they have some of the best, they have some of the most well-funded science institutions in the country in Texas. So it's not like, oh, we didn't know. They know exactly what they're doing. This law is exactly to oppress women. This law is to oppress people of color. This law is to intimidate Black people. This law is to intimidate immigrants. This law is to make transgender people not vote and not try. And here's the thing: the Supreme Court already, like in 2021, in Kansas, they said this was not constitutional. They said a SAVE Act style law that was passed was unconstitutional, and this was not okay. And you can't do this because they had a situation where it's like, you need to had to prove all these things for the state elections, but the feds, you couldn't do it. So it's kind of like they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. And this is the whole thing with states' rights, and the whole idea of states' rights. It seems like it's just exists to uphold racism, because now they're trying to pass national abortion acts. They're trying to pass national you can't vote acts. All of this, and it's like, oh, these are all, and this is all coming from states that have this whole states' rights thing. And
Yes.
states' rights doesn't seem to apply when it's this kind of stuff. States' rights only applies when it's like they want to use it to be racist, they want to use it to be sexist, then they want to scream states' rights. But when they want to take away your rights, all of a sudden the federal government becomes a tool that they want to use. And I'm just like, it's just infuriating. And it's just infuriating because, especially too, if if this is able to pass, and and Trump is able is signs it, this can impact the 2026 midterms. This can impact
Absolutely.
all kinds of things. We cannot. I mean, this is they have absolutely no respect for the Constitution. They have no respect for the people who live here. It's becoming
No.
more and more evident that this, I know this sounds ridiculous to say this, they're clearly explicitly trying to disempower us. And we seem to be like, well, maybe he's trying to just protect the election. No, he's trying
No,
to
he's not.
kill the election. He's trying to make it so that we are not empowered. I mean, I just think about how much, in regards to my life, I think about how stressed I get when I'm trying to just do basic stuff, like just do my taxes, how stressed out I am, like having to find all this paperwork. And now you're going to tell me if I move, I got to go down to the office and all this stuff with all the other stuff I got to do. Like, I'm just thinking about myself, because sometimes, a lot of times, people, we have this conversation, especially people in journalism and writing and like the art world, we're like, oh, that's other people. Like, I would definitely go through the trouble. But I'll tell you something. I'm a regular person, just like you. I'm a regular person, and I get like exhausted, and I can see myself being like, you know what? If I gotta go down to this office in order to vote, you know what? I gotta pay rent. I'm having
Yeah.
problems.
I can't miss work.
I can't do this right now. I can't do this.
And we live in an area where it's easy for us to access like our election officials, our Department of Motor Vehicles, our Department of Vital Statistics. That's not always the case. You in a lot of areas, even here in New Jersey, you have to drive like 45 minutes to get to the closest DMV. You have to go to your county vital statistics because your town only has 2,000 people in it, and they can't support a vital statistics there. And that county vital statistics is 25 minutes away, so. And that, I also, when I was doing the research for this, also that really affects the elderly as well, because the elderly don't drive or don't have access to public transportation or people that will be able to take them to go to register to vote.
I didn't think about that. Like, yeah, it's like, think about, grandma who's 80 years
Yeah.
old. Like, oh, you got to go get, think about this. Okay. Say you're 80 years old and you move, and you weren't born in New Jersey, or you weren't born where you're living right now. And you got to go to your vital statistics and get your birth certificate. That's just, and when you've been here voting, doing all this stuff. But in, like, when we have a system, if you've already registered to vote, we've already checked all these things. The whole idea that you got to now reassert who you are, and also too, a lot of people, I don't know where they're going to have this place where you go and reassert your votes, like go reassert who you are. And I could just see them going, well, we should make it be at the police station. Oh, well, that's going to stop, because that's what they do. That's the kind of stuff they do.
Yes, that's what, yeah. That's what they do, yeah.
Yeah, and we'll be going, well, if you want to register to vote, you got to go to the police department. And you got to, and I don't know how they're going to do it, but I could totally see that happening. Because I don't know, I wish I had kind of looked this up, but I don't know, like, what office do you show that you are a citizen? I know that the DMV is where I would think it would be, but also too is another thing. What if you don't want to get a driver's license? What if you don't drive? So essentially, you're kind of forced into this whole, like, well, I might as well get a driver's license. I might as well get a car. I might as well.
But I think a non-voter real ID would also work.
Yeah. I mean,
I think a non-voter real ID would also work. But something else that I wanted to mention with regards to crap, I lost my train of thought.
No, but I know, but there was some weird case that, like, the real ID wouldn't exactly work. Like, they were like, well, the real ID might not work in these special cases. And I forgot what the special case was because I thought, okay, well, you could use your real ID. They're like, well, some cases it might not work because of something. And I was like, I forgot exactly what it was. Like essentially, you need to either have a passport or a uh, birth certificate. And
Yes.
I
And
forgot
your
in what
and your marriage certificate does not, it only works as proof of a name change. It doesn't work as proof of citizenship.
and why would it not? That's the whole thing. It's like
It-
you guys
it-
think marriage is so important, but the document doesn't count for anything. It doesn't
yeah,
prove anything. Why would it not prove your citizenship?
yeah,
Why can't you use that?
yeah, exactly. You can't use it on an I-9 when you're verifying like your eligibility for employment or anything like that either. And now I remember what I was going to say. So last time, one of the last times we were talking about my ex-husband and his fun at the New Jersey DMV and how they wanted him to present his green card because they didn't believe that California was a state. So we had another incident where he had to go and renew his ID and he did not have a birth certificate. He had a hospital copy, which was not official. He had a registration of birth at the Australian embassy because he was a dual citizen. He had mail, he had bank cards, everything. But they wouldn't renew his ID for him. So, and we were flying to California like a week. So we were like, you know what? Bring all of this paperwork with you. We'll try it. We went through the TSA line and they looked at the TSA. They looked at all the paperwork and they said, you are obviously who you say you are, sir. Let's give you an extra pat down. While we were in California, we went to the Orange County Board of Vital Statistics and got a copy of his birth certificate because it was easier. Since we were going to be in this state anyway, it was easier than trying to get one by mail.
That's just it's just wild. I mean, this is just and this is just like a few of the stories, and and this is not like this is. And here's the thing, on the last time we talked, we were talking about in regards to women not who are married not being able to vote who they want to vote for because of the control of abusive spouses. This is like the state supporting that kind of abuse of like, oh, you know what, you don't need to vote, I can think for you, I can talk for you, I can whatever. And people kind of go, well, that's just it's just like you said, this is not a bug, it's a feature. They know exactly what they're doing when
Yes.
they're doing the situation. Because the thing is that, yes, if somebody who has agency, it's like that, you might be exhausted. But also, too, if you're in an abusive relationship and you're like, oh, I need to do this. Oh, can you drive me here? Can you do this so I can get my ID so I can prove who I am? And you're like, oh, well, why do you need to do that? So, I mean, here's the thing. It's like, when somebody's being abused, when somebody's in an abusive relationship, this is going to be another hurdle that they are going to have to jump through in order to essentially assert their agency. And I know people are kind of like, well, that seems really far-fetched. It's really not that far-fetched. Every single piece of paperwork you put on people, especially if they're being abused or they're being oppressed or they're being, they have, it's an institutional cementing of the oppression that they're feeling at home or at school or in their city or in their state. And this is why this is so, just amazingly like harmful and disturbing to me. And I know it's disturbing to you. And I mean, this is, I mean, that's, we kind of, we're just to wrapping this whole conversation up because there's really nothing more to say to it. But it's just like, we really need to make sure that we, get out there and like let our representatives know how we feel. Also,
Absolutely.
yeah, go
This
ahead.
needs 3/5 to pass the Senate. It's already passed the House. It needs
Yeah,
3/5 majority to pass the Senate, which means it needs Democratic support as well in order to pass.
yeah,
So we need to call our senators constantly, and we need to call Republican senators. I know that you've been recommending that people do that as well, to call the Republican senators in your parents' districts. But we do need to be calling Republican senators as well, not just our senators. If we live in blue districts, we have to branch out a little bit more. Like, those people are still working for us.
Exactly. It's not just because, like, oh, well, if you're not the same party that I am, that you don't work for me. No, we all, you represent the entire country. You don't represent just your district. You represent everybody. And I think, that's another thing. It's like, the Constitution is not negotiable. This is, unconstitutional. I feel like this act, the SAVE Act, is unconstitutional. I feel like it's a violation of Section 2 of the Voters' Rights Act. And of course, I'm not a lawyer, so this is my interpretation. But my interpretation, that is a violation of Section 2, and I feel that this is something that not only should our representatives fight for, this is something that essentially, I hope the ACLU. I know the ACLU will be involved in it. The ACLU, I think it's the National Lawyers Guild. These are organizations that need to be involved in this. And also, too, we need to know this is not constitutional. This is not constitutional. We keep saying this. This is an unconstitutional idea. This goes against our Constitution. This goes against the Voting Rights Act. And also, too, we need to defend our right to vote. We need to defend our country. If we have a democracy, everyone should be able to be allowed to vote. You shouldn't be denied your right to vote because of your gender, because of your sexual orientation, because of your culture, because of your race, because of some, and also too, this also not forget, there are a lot of people who are poor who don't have their passport, who don't have access to their birth certificate, and don't have ID. So this
It's
is
not cheap to get your paperwork either.
I even think about that. It's yeah, you're right. It's not cheap. It's
It's
not like,
not cheap to get your paperwork.
yeah. So that could cost you like $100 depending on where you are, and just especially, oh, I'm in a hurry, so I need to get this done. So it's not cheap. It's not free. That's the thing too. If we're gonna do this, I'm okay. We're not. I even want to have this conversation, but if we're going to do this, it should be free and easy in order for you to access your information. But if it's going to cost money for you to prove who you are, then that's another thing that is a problem. So this is, all of this, just throw it out. We already had this conversation, and we found it unconstitutional. So it should just continue to be found that way. And here's the thing: we all need to say, we just let people know this hasn't passed. This hasn't passed. This is not a thing. Because I think half of the battle is kind of like this propaganda, like, oh, well, if you're a citizen, you don't have your ID, then you can't vote. We have this act, blah 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 blah. Some people will just take themselves out of the game, and this is all part of it.
They hear about it, but they don't hear the culmination of it, and they just assume, well, this has happened, so I can't vote anymore. I'm not going to even bother.
And this is why they show every time somebody goes to jail for some like mistake, they highlight it. That highlight is to show people, to scare people. So if you don't vote right, we're gonna put you in jail. If you see, you're gonna go to jail. And this is exactly why they do it. They do it to scare people, because it's more powerful to get you to take yourself out of the game than for them to just take you out of the game. They can get you to take yourself out of the game. It's cheaper, it's easier, and actually they can just be like, well, I never did that. We didn't do that. That's not what we did. If people decide not to vote, that's not on us.
And again, if your vote didn't matter, if your voice didn't matter, they wouldn't be trying so hard to take it away from you.
Exactly. And with that, we are going to wrap this conversation up. We are so thankful that you guys are listening to us and supporting auto asphyxiation. We're happy to come out here and like talk and chat. And we actually hope to like get some people on the show and get some interviews and all that stuff. And is there anything else you want to say, Kimberly?
I think I'm good. I hope that we see some people out in New York City tomorrow. On Monday. I don't know when this is becoming live, so
it will be on live on Monday. Here's the thing: if it like, yes, we're gonna be out there on Monday. So if you see us, say hello.
Please do say hi.
Yes, exactly. So we're gonna be on Union Square.